Good evening, everybody. We're really happy to welcome you to Hippocrates Health Institute, and it is a huge privilege tonight to be standing here in front of you and introducing a dear friend, a colleague, and an inspiration to me, known as Phil Nicozisis. And Phil went through our Health Educator program, and he, in his own words, has had his health and his heart changed by turning to a plant-based diet. And because of that experience, he has now committed so much of his efforts and his time and his whole life, basically, to traveling all over and sharing the message of what it means to truly turn to a plant-based diet and understand what it means to be vegan. He has been speaking at Freedom Fest, and that occurs in a political area about being free, and he followed very prestigious people over there. He's been on cruise ships speaking. He's been in public libraries all over, and he's a great asset for all of us as far as understanding and being inspired by something that will not only impact our bodies, but the body of this entire planet. So please welcome Phil.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Pam. Welcome, everybody. I would like to welcome all the vegans and all the pre-vegans here tonight. You know, us vegans, we're not crazy. We're just here from the future. We really believe this is the future of food. It's a movement. It's getting bigger and bigger. And soon, I believe, it's certainly within our lifetimes, I believe we'll be reaching a tipping point. You know, we were all vegan. We were all born vegan before we even had the chance to decide for ourselves how to eat. We were all herbivores until we were taught to be carnivores by people who loved us, namely our parents, and that's sometimes why it's even hard for people to even confront this topic. I can prove that we're all vegan, or that we were. You take a baby, it's old enough to know what's going on. You put him in a playpen, maybe he doesn't want to be in the playpen. And in that playpen, you put an apple, and then you also put a rabbit. And without exception, the baby will eat the apple, and he will play with the rabbit. And so it is. How do you know if someone is a vegan, by the way? Don't worry, they'll tell you. How many meat eaters does it take to change a light bulb? None, because they'd rather be kept in the dark. How many people have heard or read the World Peace Diet? Besides being a health educator here at Hippocrates, I'm also a World Peace Diet facilitator. And the basic premise of the book is we will never have a society where we treat each other well, so long as there is violence required by our food choices. And it doesn't come without a cost, because what goes around comes around, as we'll discuss in further detail tonight. Now, here's a quote from Will Tuttle in the book. The suffering that the food animals undergo and the suffering of those who eat them and profit by them, the suffering of starving people who could be fed with the grain that feeds these animals, and the suffering that we thoughtlessly impose on the ecosystem, other creatures, and future generations are all interconnected. It is this interconnectedness of suffering, its reverse of love, caring, and awareness that calls out for our understanding. Anybody recognize this place? The jewel of South Florida. People coming from all over the world, 400,000 people over its 60-year operation as a nonprofit. And thousands of us have gone through the Health Educator program, a 9-week program. The Life Transformation program is a 3-week program. It's 3 weeks because, as my first grade school teacher, Mrs. Ryder, used to tell us, and I can't believe I remembered that, but it really hit home when I came here. It takes 3 weeks to make or break a habit. But also, physiologically, every 3 weeks, our taste buds change over. And we have a completely new set of tasters. Thousands of people have gone through the Health Educator program. 3 times a year they meet here. And the health educators are here in session. Would the health educators please stand? We'd like to recognize you. Thank you. Because what you're doing for 9 weeks is you're coming to the fire, the source, and you're lighting that fire, and you will carry the torch of truth. And it won't be easy because all of society, all the institutions, everything out there is arrayed against so much of what we know. As they say, an ounce of experience is worth more than a ton of theories. This is 18 years ago, and as a younger man, I ate the standard American diet. I had a diet that basically was an animal protein-based diet. And then 12 years ago, I was almost famous. I was in a rock band called Slate, and the 1970s called, and they wanted their hairstyle back. And so I have shorter hair now, as you see. And this year, I was stepping out on the town in my tuxedo. You can see how a plant-based diet changes people. And 2 weeks ago, I celebrated my 50th birthday. It was a milestone, and there was a lot of joy associated with that night because I realized how many people love me, and that's just a great feeling, and I wanted to share that with you. So this vegan thing is great. People are coming here to this institute for themselves because for the most part, they're up against chronic and catastrophic diseases, and that's fine. When you do it for yourself, that's veganism through the side door. And the thing about veganism through the side door is because when you do, say, lose the weight or resolve a catastrophic or chronic illness, you tend to drift away. You tend to, in my own case, after I came here, I became a vegetarian. I thought that was a nice middle ground, and I gained all the weight back. I had all the same middle-aged health problems that I had before I even became a vegetarian. But veganism through the front door is what we're here to talk about tonight. When you realize that the animals have been endowed with an ability to suffer. When you realize that there are profound consequences with our food choices. We are all interconnected. And once you realize this, you realize that all life is a beautiful tapestry of interconnectedness. That the food animals have been endowed with an ability to suffer. So then, when you see what's on your plate represents the confinement, the exploitation, in some cases the castration, the slavery, the Holocaustal conditions that took to get that food product on the plate, when you realize and you make that connection, you would never drift away, you would never be tempted by having another animal product. The consequences of our food choices have a profound effect, not just on our bodies, our physiology, but our mental wellness, our culture, and our society. We're born into what's called the herding culture. We seem to be under this invisible trance, this invisible ideology, which we'll discuss in more detail soon, called carnism. And what is the herding culture? Well, about 10,000 years ago, we started to confine animals against their will. Some of us learned it as the domestication of animals, right? And before that, the animals, for the most part, were mysterious co-passengers on this planet. And believe it or not, the food animals and all creatures were designed to live celebratory and purposeful lives. And what are we doing when we're eating the animal products? We're taking away their intelligence, we're taking away our divine intelligence. But our culture says in no uncertain terms that it's right to eat these animals, to confine them, to castrate them, to brand them, to take their children's milk. We're even told that God grants us this right, that we need to eat these foods to be healthy and strong. We're told that it's no big deal. Don't think about it. But the animals have been endowed with an ability to suffer. So then could it be that the root cause of our crisis is on our plates? Could it be that the reason why the world is screwed up is because we eat animals? Well, that's just the theory. And I intend to back it up by connecting the dots of history. What do I mean? Well, armed conflict. Armed conflict was directly created as an institution that was directly created by animal agriculture. Well, how can that be? Well, cows have always meant wealth through history. And then war was born. As a matter of fact, the Sanskrit word for war, the Indian word for war means the desire for more cows. You see, it was the first and perhaps the greatest get-rich-quick scheme that was ever thought of. When you wanted to get more wealth back in the day, I love that phrase, back in the day. It just kind of could be last month, could be 10,000 years ago. Just seems to work. What did you do? You found out who had the cows, and you got your men and your weapons, and you went and you waged war to get the cows and to get more wealth. And when you got more cows, you needed more land, you needed more water, you needed more resources. And so it is. Per capita means per head of cattle. The very word capitalism comes from per capita. Why do you think they call it the stock market? The fancy English word pecuniary, which on the SAT, I definitely got that word wrong, but it happens to mean wealthy in English. But translated in the Latin, it means animal. And then when you went to war and you lost, you were not killed in battle, guess what? You became a slave. Well, let's fast forward then today. Enough about history. I gave a talk in Las Vegas a few months ago at a conference called Freedom Fest. And at the gate in Fort Lauderdale, the plane that takes us to Las Vegas, I encountered this nice couple. And as you can see, they're holding their cat, and which is the family pet. They were holding this cat like it was their cherished newborn. And so me being the instigator that I am, and I kind of like to press the envelope, but my mother raised me right, and I always try to be polite. And we had a conversation, and it went like this. So I'm attending a conference in Las Vegas where I'm the speaker on veganism. The idea that we love cats and dogs, but we eat cows, pigs, chicken, and fish. What's your thought on that?
I don't eat much beef, but because I can't stand the thought of killing one, probably. No, I don't like chewing them either.
How about chicken?
Chicken I eat. Chickens, I don't have an attachment to chickens.
Just don't. No.
My mom grew up on a farm.
But what would be the difference between the chicken and the cat?
Chickens are not cuddly, friendly, don't make you feel good, but they can be.
Okay. Yeah.
They don't live in your house.
Right. They don't live in your house. Chickens aren't cuddly, make you feel good, but they can. I don't eat meat because I can't stand the thought of killing them, so she's mixed on that. Folks, what belief system allows us to love cats and dogs, but eat cows, pigs, chicken, and fish? Why do we love dogs, we eat pigs, and we wear cows? Dr. Melanie Joy, she coined the word, and she called it carnism. As you can see, there's very little difference between the dog and the pig. Actually, the biggest difference is that the pig has the intelligence of a 3-year-old, and the dog not so much. And carnism relies on denial. It relies on disconnected. It requires that people don't see the holocaustal conditions that go on every day. It also requires a certain belief that it's normal, natural, and necessary to eat animal products, just like perhaps sexism to some seems normal, natural, and necessary. Like perhaps racism, not too many generations ago, was in fact normal, natural, and necessary. I imagine the people in the antebellum South who owned slaves would have a very difficult time agreeing with us that owning people as property was an evil thing. We talked about cultural programming essentially at birth, not even having a choice to decide how we're going to eat. But now that we're all grown up, we're constantly bombarded by messages. We're constantly told how we should eat, and the institutions, whether it's our families, our churches, our Sunday schools, our schools, and others, are aligned to ensure compliance to eat animals. We call it the meat medical media industrial complex. What is that? Just turn on the TV. What do you see? The commercials come on, you see commercials for McMurder, Kentucky Fried Cruelty, Murder King, Outhouse Steakhouse. And then the other commercials come on. And what are those? What are those commercials? Not feeling so well? Cholesterol got you down? Can't breathe? Afraid of a heart attack? And then, how about the side effects of these drugs? Thoughts of suicide, dry mouth, diarrhea, sudden death, infection, all kinds of side effects. And it's all facilitated and reinforced by what I call the gag media. Because if you think about it, it's common sense. And I actually learned this in my own business experience. These companies are not going to run stories and criticize their advertisers. So what's the net effect of all this? Ironically and profoundly, we become like cash cows to the meat medical media industrial complex. The cash cows on the farm suffer from all kinds of illnesses, including E. coli, including mad cow disease. They also suffer from sleeplessness, insomnia, and depression. And then in record numbers, what do? We go to the doctor for sleeplessness, insomnia, and depression. So I do not show any videos or pictures of the animals in the slaughterhouse. I learned actually the hard way, and it's just not the right way to go about it. But if you're interested later and you want to maybe crash course yourself and scare the hell out of yourself into veganism, go on YouTube and see Farm to Fridge. It's about 13 minutes long. And if you want to do a deeper dive in this topic, you can see Earthlings, which is on YouTube for about an hour and 20 minutes long. How many people have seen Earthlings? Here's my next question. Did you watch the whole thing? Yep. So you don't count because you're a vegan activist. I know you, Elena. So when I give these talks, I ask this question. I'm batting 1,000. No one can get through this entire documentary. It's so bad. Yet all they're doing is shining the light and showing the truth of the Holocaust that we've created on Earth. So then we have to ask ourselves, why do we prefer not to see these videos? Prefers, I'm being way too kind. Why would we do almost anything to get out of seeing these videos? Don't you think folks should know where the hell breakfast, lunch, and dinner comes from? So then we have to ask ourselves, if it's not suitable for our eyes and our ears, how could it be suitable for our bodies? If it's not suitable for our eyes and our ears, how could it be suitable for our souls? But there's a gift in our discomfort. There's compassion within our humanity. Our Sophia wisdom knows that what we're doing is wrong when we eat animals, if we think about it. We decide to become connected. We decide to wake up. You know, the hardest thing sometimes to do is to awaken someone who isn't asleep. Sophia, it's feminine in nature. And it's actually, as you know, a girl's name. And it comes from the Greek word. Does anyone know what it means? It means wisdom. And that's why, how you know, men just aren't that smart. If you don't like seeing pictures of violence toward animals being posted, you need to help stop the violence, not the picture. The court of law, the hitman, and the mafia boss. See, the court of law makes no distinction between the mafia boss and the hitman. In many cases, the judge will give the mafia boss, by the way, is anyone in the mafia here? Okay, so I can speak freely now. Thank you. The mafia boss will get the harsher punishment because he actually ordered the hit. Well, it seems to me, when we go to the grocery store and we see the body parts of these animals in nice, neat little packages on the shelf, and we go to the counter, we go to the clerk, and she smiles at us and we smile at her, and as soon as we pay the money, seems to me, we are like the mafia boss that orders the hit. We didn't kill the animal, but we paid someone to kill the animal. And who are we paying to stab animals for a living? Do you know that these factory farm workers as a group have the highest rate of suicide? They have the highest rate of drug abuse. They have the highest rate of spousal abuse. Because they know what they're doing is wrong. And there's actually a clinical term for it. It's called self-induced post-traumatic stress syndrome, is what these factory farm workers suffer from. And folks, we're so disconnected. If we're eating animal products, we're disconnected. We don't even realize we're like the mafia boss that orders the hit. So do animals feel pain? What does the science say? Well, in 2012, a group of scientists wrote the Declaration of Consciousness, and they said that all sentient beings, specifically they pointed out vertebrate animals, those with a spine and a central nervous system, they feel pain like we do. They react to pain by crying, by shrieking, eating less food. They give distress calls. They experience respiratory and cardiovascular changes, and they release stress hormones. Here is a screenshot. Can't see it so well. There is a tear coming down from the bull here. And in a bullfight, of course, that's murdering an animal for entertainment. And so in a factory farm, they do what they need to do to bring that animal food to your plate. So I would suggest to you, the only difference between bullfighting and going to the grocery store is the choreography. You see, whether it's Madonna's music or whether it's country music, it's still music. Animals even have empathy. In one study, they devised a system, the scientists, where they had two groups of monkeys, and they would give the one group of monkeys a reward if they shocked the other group of monkeys. And to their surprise, the monkeys would rather starve than shock their fellow monkeys. So animals are capable even of empathy. And we have to ask ourselves, in this same study, would mankind be so noble? Let's talk about factory farms, what goes on in the factory farm without pictures. And I'm going to single out vegetarian cuisine, because people who decide not to eat the flesh of an animal feel that they're making a more compassionate choice by eating eggs and the secretion of the animal. But the truth is, there's just as much murder and pain in vegetarian cuisine. There are 9.1 billion animals slaughtered annually in the United States. That's about 300 per second, 70 billion worldwide. First off, on the dairy farm, understand that dairy consumption destroys the mother-baby relationship. It's an abomination of parenthood, the mother-baby relationship. The industry calls it a rape rack. That's their word. So first we have to artificially inseminate the cow with a sperm gun. And now I'll let your imagination run wild. Where do you think they get the sperm from? And how do you think they get it? And once the cow is pregnant, the cow will yield in the wild about 10 pounds of milk a day. And on the factory farm, they're driven like slaves to yield about 120 pounds of milk a day. And so that pus mustache is a pus mustache. It's not a milk mustache, it's a pus mustache. Because your government allows lots of pus, even in organic milk, allows lots of pus in the milk. And then after about 9 months, the newborns are stolen, taken away from the mother. And did you know that the mother and the baby cry for days? Now, I gave this talk in California last year, and a young lady raised her hand. She said, I'm from Kalamata, Greece, and I live in the countryside outside of the village. And at night when I'm laying in bed, I can hear the screams and the wailing and the crying of the mother and the baby. And all at once, the room went, because it became real. Because again, an ounce of experience is worth more than a ton of theories. The newborns don't live very long. They're shackled and then they're killed as children for veal and soft leather. The cow's average life is about 3 to 5 years on a factory farm. But in the wild, they can live, it says 20, it's really up to 22 years. And of course, then they're executed. The egg industry. Did you know that the male chicks, when they hatch, they see their male, and of course they don't lay eggs, so then they will throw them into a dumpster where they suffocate on the weight of themselves, or they're thrown into a giant masticator where they're ground up. So the pain, the misery, and the suffering of what goes on here is beyond our wildest imagination. Yet people eat pizza, hot dogs, and hamburgers, cheese and eggs, and so on, without giving it a mere thought. We go to the rib fundraiser at the church social hall, and the priests and everybody's saying how great the ribs are. And they haven't even stopped to think, because we're disconnected when we should be interconnected. We are interconnected, and we need to recognize that all life is a beautiful tapestry of interconnectedness. This slide, this tiny hole, makes that farm a free-range farm. So yes, they're not caged, they're not put in cages, but they're, as you can see, they're packed together so tight. Imagine living your entire life in an elevator with 15 people you don't like. You'd go crazy too. And that's why they, without anesthesia, snip off the tips of their beaks so that they keep from pecking each other. In the 1950s, before factory farming, the average chicken weighed about 2 pounds. Now today, the average chicken weighs about 9 pounds. So all of this does not come without a cost. It has profound consequences against us. Sowing what we reap. We kill the animals, and the animals kill us. What's the number one disease in the United States and number one cause of death? Heart disease. A 95% lifestyle choice. We kill the animals, and the animals kill us. We give the animals a toxic environment, we give them toxic food, and then we live in a toxic environment, and we eat toxic food. We destroy their family structure, we steal their babies, we steal their time, we steal their babies' milk, we steal their happiness, we steal their ability to live celebratory and purposeful lives. Ultimately, we do end up taking their lives. We find ourselves suffering from mental illnesses, shattered families, broken relationships, all the things that mankind causes to the animals. The factory farm conditions lead the animals, as I mentioned, to suffer from depression, anxiety, and insomnia. And then in record numbers, the pharmaceutical is very happy to service, to fill those prescriptions for depression, anxiety, and insomnia. We stab, or we pay people to stab animals for a living, and then we get stabbed. We mentioned heart disease, where they crack open your chest, they take a vein from your leg, they sew it onto your coronary artery at a cost of about $150,000, and they don't tell you that 40% of those grafted vessels will fail. And they call veganism extreme. We overfeed. You saw the picture of the chickens. And then we are overfed. 70% of us are either overweight or obese. So an animal and a dairy eater sows thousands and thousands of karmic seeds. And it would be naive to think that he does not reap what he sows. So I believe there is a direct connection. So on a deep level, I believe we have a physiology of peace. We've been given a body, every one of us. that does not require plant foods. Excuse me, does not require animal foods. I'm kind of hungry, so I'm thinking about eating plants. I didn't eat dinner. Been given this body that does not require animal food. So what happens when we take this gift and we throw it in the face of our higher power, throw it in the face of our Creator? We say we're going to eat animal foods anyway. Is it a stretch to think that we perhaps unleash the cause and effect of our own demise? When a human kills an animal for food, he's neglecting his own hunger for justice. Man prays for mercy, but is unwilling to extend it to others. Why should he then expect mercy from God? It's unfair to expect something you're not willing to give. It's inconsistent. So around holiday time, around the dinner table, my brother, who's a highly well-respected orthodontist internationally, and he is still very much aligned with the standard American diet, the SAD diet. And of course, you can imagine we have lively conversations about a lot of things, including this vegan thing. And he would always say, well, plants have feelings too, and that really pissed me off. I decided to check into this thing and do some research and find out really what it means. Well, here's what I found out. It was originally suggested in a book, The Secret Life of a Plant, a pop culture book from the 60s. And then there have been some editorials along the way. But what I found is, just like the Declaration of Consciousness, that because they're not vertebrate animals, they are not sentient, they have no brain, they have no central nervous system, therefore they cannot feel. You see, a plant reacts, but an animal feels and responds. A plant will turn toward the sun to maybe maximize its happiness, just like a bell will ring if you run an electric wire through it. But neither is a sentient being. But the pig will respond with shrieks of fear and pain when it is executed. So we have to understand that a plant is something, and an animal, a sentient being, is someone. If we still feel sorry for the plants, then imagine how many plants we could save if we stopped eating animals. Because did you know that almost all the grain that grows in this world goes to feed the animals? That's my little smart alecky quip back to my brother when he says plants have no feelings. So that discussion hasn't been resolved yet in the family. Although my parents, I'm very proud to say, came to Hippocrates Health Institute in March for the 3-week program and are still living the vegan lifestyle. And they have never felt better in their 70s. I've never seen them look better, and they're really loving the program. But I also discovered something really interesting that really makes sense to me. Plants are part of the cycle of life. You see, first off, don't we have a right to eat and grow food? Of course, the answer is yes. There's a symbiotic relationship between the plants and the humans, right? The plants give off oxygen. We breathe the oxygen. We require it. We breathe out CO2, and the plants thrive on CO2. The plants have, in round numbers, there are about 20,000 known phytochemicals that were embedded, that started to be created through photosynthesis about 500 million years ago. That we come along 500 million years later and benefit from these phytochemicals that often halt, reverse, and resolve chronic and catastrophic diseases. So if they could speak, they would say that they are certainly at peace with being part of the cycle of life. What's normal is abnormal. Kill a dog and go to jail. Kill a cow and get a paycheck. Kill thousands of animals, thousands of cows, as the owner of the factory farm, and get respect in the business as a successful business owner, and even get a powerful voice in Congress. So powerful that if you make a recording of what goes on inside the factory farm, you can be tried under federal law and put in a federal prison under the U.S. terrorism laws. Because again, this invisible ideology that we all seem to be under the trance of, or those of us who eat animal products, relies on denial. It relies on keeping people from the truth. And by the way, that's the greatest weakness. That is the weakness of carnism, and that's why we can win this. People pray for peace at the dinner table just before they dine on the corpses of animals that were produced through violence. How could you ask for something that you're not willing to give? Animal meat is seen as simple and easy, but it's costly and expensive. Plant-based cuisine is seen as difficult and expensive. But if you saw the documentary Cowspiracy, you know that plants take 15 times less water and resources and land than animal agriculture. People say vegan food tastes gross, and then they proceed to season their meat with vegan food to make it taste so good. Because what's normal is abnormal. A word on religion. The vegan ethic, the vegan message is in profound alignment with the teachings of all the major religions, such as the Hindu tradition has the principle of ahimsa, which is the principle of nonviolence. The Ten Commandments. I don't remember seeing an asterisk. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not covet, taking things that are not yours, like eggs and milk, is coveting. And even adultery, because the Torah is clear that any involvement in that way with the animals is covered under adultery. I don't remember seeing an asterisk where we stop at the human race. What this is really about is expanding our sphere of concern. Our sphere of concern. We love our cats and dogs. Well, those people, I think, are halfway vegan. All they have to do is expand their sphere of compassion to include all life. The vegan ethic is in alignment with the original core instruction, which is to love God and to love others. It's not New Age. It's thousands of years old. And it says, I will never be happy so long as I am harming someone else for my own benefit. You guys, you remember the Pythagorean theorem in geometry class. Well, the Pythagorean principle, he was also a philosopher, and he said, so long as mankind kills the animals, man will kill each other. He said that he who sows the seeds of murder and pain will never find joy and happiness. How we treat the vulnerable. We talked about religion. Let's talk about spirituality that perhaps should go alongside the religion for sure. You see, we tend to be nice to people, at least in large part, because they can retaliate. If I were to walk up to Jared here and kick him, he might be protected by the Second Amendment and have a concealed weapon, which is available in Florida, and take care of things for me, against me. Or he might call security or the police, and society would then prosecute me, and the government would, and lock me up. So I'm going to be nice to you. But it seems to me that the spiritual breakthrough occurs when we respect, we honor, protect, and we're kind to those who are defenseless, to those who cannot protect themselves, to those who have no voice. And that are the food animals. And when we make this spiritual breakthrough, we realize that all life is a beautiful tapestry of interconnectedness, that their welfare is our welfare. And when we make this spiritual breakthrough, as individuals and then as a collective, I believe we can start building a society based on cooperation and love, which includes business. I think that we should take true free market capitalism, not crony capitalism, which exists many places, and we should start calling free market capitalism, we should start calling it cooperationism, because that's really what it is. We've been talking about the ethics of eating, right? But what else? What kind of shoes are we wearing? Leather is a directly part of the animal industry, animal skin. What kind of car interior do we have? Did you know that Tesla and Mercedes are starting to offer vegan options? Vivisection, we're using animals for testing. And I think in our lifetime this will be a thing of the past because we are able to simulate with computers. And we're using animals for entertainment. But as you know, this year I'm happy to say that Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus closed their doors forever. For what reason? For the similar concepts that we're talking about here today. So while the diet is very important, the deeper spiritual meaning of veganism includes getting away from anything that has to do with exploitation, domination, and executing a sentient being against his or her will. So let's summarize a little bit, and then we'll wrap it up, and then maybe we have some questions or comments. We talked about veganism through the front door. When you realize that these food animals have been endowed with an ability to suffer and that all life is interconnected, that the root cause of our crisis is right there on our plates, whether it's our health or whether it's conflict, whether it's the institution of slavery, for example. And this happens because of our cultural programming, carnism and the herding culture. But it doesn't come without a price. We sow what we reap, and the vegan ethic is in profound alignment with religion and spirituality. Now we talked about some downer type concepts here today, things that are not easy to talk about or think about. Because when you think, sometimes those are the most vivid pictures. But this is good news. It doesn't have to be this way. I've come to understand, in my own experience, I've come to understand this vegan thing as a liberation. You see, veganism is a way out. It's walking through a different door than the doors we have previously been shown. We are like the cows. We didn't choose it, and they didn't choose it. And if we are eating meat and dairy, folks, we are being exploited by the meat medical media industrial complex, and we are simply following the orders that we were given as children. So I'm here to ask some of the pre-vegans and the vegans here who might be tempted down the road. Let's stop following the orders that we were given as children. You see, the meat medical industrial complex is designed to dumb us down. The mind is vast and free, but when we eat animal products, it fogs our minds, it sickens our bodies. But when we eat a world peace diet, when we eat a vegan diet, we bless ourselves, we bless each other, we bless the animals. And only then do I think that we can go to our higher power with clean hands, not with blood on our hands. Veganism liberates us because once we stop following orders, we become more creative, we become more happy, we have more energy. So I believe we will be free when we free others. And that is the good news. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. That is the ethics of eating. Thank you.